Now this is what I was expecting from a Bioshock DLC. It doesn't necessarily excuse the previously disappointing DLC, and it's not perfect, but it's more than I could hope for. Though Burial at Sea Episode 1 is not very long, it's full of detail and side content. You could finish the DLC in less than 2 hours, but if you explore every nook and cranny and take in all of the amazing detail and side content, it'll take you about double that time. So what does it do right? It feels like Rapture. The atmosphere is rich, and the people, while sometimes feeling a bit rigid, give us a glimpse at what life in Rapture was like. At one point you enter some type of club and get to see a waiter using his Houdini plasmid to pop around the place, as well as use things such as the Old Man Winter plasmid to chill patrons' drinks. This combined with the fact that the game uses your foreknowledge to creep you out, such as citizens pointing out big daddies and you come across a group of little sisters in training, really adds to the experience. And the atmosphere in the actual hostile areas fit old Bioshock almost perfectly. While I was sad to not see the return of such things as wandering big daddies with little sisters all over the place, or sentry bots flying around, the more twisted and disturbing environment of Bioshock is there. It's dark and splicers are perfectly crazy. There were even a few scares which were my favorite part of the original Bioshock. This, for example, is probably one of my favorite parts of the DLC. You go back into this area, and once you return you notice an upgrade bottle across the room. The first time I played this, I was like, I don't remember seeing that before. And bam, the splicers that were pretending to be mannequins pop out at you. The combat is even more intense. You're almost constantly starved for bullets, and the enemies just seem tougher and more powerful. Scavenging everything feels important, and you really feel like you're barely getting by. The moments when you can successfully sneak up on a splicer or lure a group into a trap feels extra rewarding because you know that you've saved yourself some even ammo. You also see the return of the weapon wheel, which brings back the feeling of Bioshock and allows for the lack of ammo to not cripple you, since you have several different types to fall back on should you run out, even if you only have a few bullets in each. And there's a new weapon to include in these various types, called the Radar Range. This is a kind of microwave ray gun. I love both this weapon and the idea behind it. When I think of the 1950s, I think of the invention of the microwave, and what better way to include that innovation in the city of Rapture than a fancy new gun? It's a lot of fun to cook enemies until they explode, damaging all other nearby hostiles. The last huge positive I have for the game is that Ken Levine and his crew keep hitting with their storylines. I don't mean to hype up the ending, but it's still able to remain twists and turns, to shock and surprise. I can honestly say I'm surprised that they can keep up this streak of twists that come out of left field but tie up pretty perfectly. The ending of Burial at Sea Part 1 leaves you excited for the next episode, as you're dying to know once again where they're going to go from here. However, there are a few negatives that I had. The biggest one is the fact that the plasmids aren't even renamed. I get that they probably didn't want to have to redo a lot of the system to support the old Eve hypos and carrying around hypos since they did away with that in Infinite, but they didn't even rename them from their old Vigor names. I understand that this is supposed to be a slightly different Rapture due to tears apparently being present in this one, but the fact that the plasmids were completely different felt a little alienating. It's not part of the Rapture we know or love. The beginning section is also a little bit of a low point for me. You're tasked with obtaining a bunny mask, which is an invitation to a Sander Cohen event, but you're not actually doing anything. You visit shops and talk to the owners, then Elizabeth distracts them for you to sneak into their back rooms to search around. This is interesting in theory, but you literally can't fail this. There doesn't seem to be any way of getting caught, so while it provides you with a bit of interesting dialogue and a little bit of insight into the growth of Elizabeth's character, it's a bit disappointing that what you do here doesn't really matter. You don't need to be sneaky at all, you just walk around stealing from each store's back room with no consequence as to how you approach it. There's also the fact that the inclusion of Skyrail type systems in Rapture makes no fucking sense. Why are there rails here? It doesn't really ruin things, but it does make you take a step back and go, well, this doesn't make any sense. Other than hurting the immersion, it's not terrible. Just seems like it would have been better to reskin the Skyhook to be something non-Sky related, seeing as how it doesn't make sense for Rapture to have the open air environments that made Skyrails a thing in Columbia. Lastly, the transition between sections feels a bit rushed. One moment you're at a mostly peaceful artists party, the next you're in a bathysphere being shipped to a makeshift prison full of crazed splicers. The same could be said for the ending. While I really liked where the narrative went, it all kind of hits you in the last 2 minutes of the game. This is kind of similar to the massive curveballs that Infinite throws you in its ending, but the only hints you're given for the ending of Burial at Sea are a couple of short flashbacks that show a pool of water, hinting that our Booker is probably somehow related to some baptism or Columbia somehow, which we could have guessed anyways. These are small gripes for the most part, and don't undo the great narrative and return to Rapture that this DLC offers. It just feels right, and it's a wonderful trip back to one of gaming's favorite locations. If you loved Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite, you will love this DLC. I will warn you, however, that it is kind of necessary to have played both games before this to fully understand the story, and it's definitely necessary to have played them both to fully appreciate the story and environment. Overall, I loved this DLC, and I eagerly await the next installment. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time.